Hey, Flo here, trying to catch something like a sunset. I don't know if I'll be able to actually see the sunset because it's going to be behind those trees, but whoa, I forgot my phone was on my chair. I almost dumped it in the water. This is very squishy stuff. There's apparently basically no signal even though I have 2 bars, so I can't do a proper live stream or even just do the slides, unfortunately. So, that's annoying. What do we got? So we're going to be reading 1 Kings chapter 10 and 11, 2 Chronicles 9, and 2 Corinthians 12. Gotta hurry up and do this before I lose that light. This chair is going to sink right into this stuff. It's very squishy. Ugh. Okay. 1 Kings 10. Actually, let me just try this for fun. It's too bad. There is a 2-bar signal, but it's fake. It's a fake signal. I need to make that offline slide app. It's so annoying not to be able to use this properly. Okay, well, I got my slides to work, but I don't think they'll show up on the screen. Because that phone over there had no signal. This one has a little bit, but just in this distance there's a change. I think I can read them at least. I'll have to overlay these later, of course. First Kings chapter 10. Now when the queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to test him with difficult questions. She arrived in Jerusalem with a very large caravan, with camels bearing spices, gold in great abundance, and precious stones. So she came to Solomon and spoke to him all that was on her mind. And Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too difficult for the king to explain. When the queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon, the palace he had built, the food at his table, the seating of his servants, the service and attire of his attendants and cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he presented at the house of the Lord, it took her breath away. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your words and wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told to me. Your wisdom and prosperity have far exceeded the report I heard. How blessed are your men! How blessed are those servants of yours who stand continually before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you to set you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to carry out justice and righteousness." Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold, a great quantity of spices, and precious stones. Never again was such an abundance of spices brought in as those the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. The fleet of Hiram that brought gold from Ophir also brought from Ophir a great cargo of almug wood and precious stones. The king made the almug wood into steps for the house of the Lord, and for the king's palace, and into lyres and harps for the singers. Never before had such almug wood been brought in, nor has such been seen to this day. King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba all she desired, whatever she asked, besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty. Then she left and returned to her own country along with her servants. The weight of gold that came to Solomon each year was 666 talents, not including the revenue from the merchants, traders, and all the Arabian kings and governors of the land. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 shekels of gold went into each shield. He also made 300 small shields of hammered gold. 3 minas of gold went into each shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Additionally, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with pure gold. The throne had 6 steps, and its back had a rounded top. There were armrests on both sides of the seat, with a lion standing beside each armrest. 12 lions stood on the 6 steps, one at either end of each step. Nothing like this had ever been made for any kingdom. All King Solomon's drinking cups were gold, and all the utensils of the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. There was no silver, because it was accounted as nothing in the days of Solomon. For the king had the ships of Tarshish at sea with Hiram's fleet, and once every 3 years the ships of Tarshish would arrive bearing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. So King Solomon surpassed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. The whole world sought an audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom that God had put in his heart. Year after year, each visitor would bring his tribute, articles of silver and gold, clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. Solomon accumulated 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, which he stationed in the chariot cities and also with him in Jerusalem. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as abundant as sycamore in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and Kue. The royal merchants purchased them from Kue. A chariot could be imported from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. Likewise, they exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and to the kings of Aram. Nice. I hope those clouds light up with some color. That would be sick. Oh, this could be amazing looking. It already looks amazing, but could be unbelievable. First Kings chapter 11. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of Moab, Ammon, Edom, and Sidon, as well as Hittite women. These women were from the nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with them, for surely they will turn your hearts after their gods. For surely they will turn your hearts after their gods." Yet Solomon clung to these women in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. For when Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and he was not wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord his God as his father David had been. Solomon followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord. Unlike his father David, he did not follow the Lord completely. At that time, on a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and for Moloch, the abomination of the Ammonites. He did the same for all his foreign wives, who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. Now the Lord grew angry with Solomon, because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had warned Solomon explicitly not to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. Then the Lord said to Solomon, "Because you have done this and have not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded you, I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to your servant. Nevertheless, for the sake of your father David, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom away from him. I will give one tribe to your son for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen." Then the Lord raised up Solomon an adversary, Hadad the Edomite, from the royal line of Edom. Earlier, when David was in Edom, Joab, the commander of the army, had gone to bury the dead and had struck down every male in Edom. Joab and all Israel had stayed there 6 months until he had killed every male in Edom. But Hadad, still just a young boy, had fled to Egypt, along with some Edomites who were servants of his father. Hadad and his men set out from Midian and went to Paran. They took men from Paran with them and went to Egypt, to Pharaoh king of Egypt, who gave Hadad a house and land and provided him with food. There Hadad found such great favor in the sight of Pharaoh that he gave to him in marriage the sister of Queen Tahpenes, his own wife. And the sister of Tahpenes bore Hadad a son named Genubath. Tahpenes herself weaned him in Pharaoh's palace, and Genubath lived there among the sons of Pharaoh. When Hadad heard in Egypt that David had rested with his fathers and that Joab, the commander of the army, was dead, he said to Pharaoh, "Let me go, that I may return to my own country." But Pharaoh asked him, "What have you lacked here with me that you suddenly want to go back to your own country?" "Nothing," Hadad replied, "but please let me go." And God raised up against Solomon another adversary, Rezon the son of Eliada, who had fled from his master, Hadadezer king of Zobah, and had gathered men to himself. When David killed the Zoabites, Rezon captained a band of raiders and went to Damascus, where they settled and gained control. Rezon was Israel's enemy throughout the days of Solomon, adding to the trouble caused by Hadad. So Rezon ruled over Aram with hostility toward Israel. Now Jeroboam son of Nebat was an Ephraimite from Zereda, whose mother was a widow named Zeruiah. Jeroboam was a servant of Solomon, but he rebelled against the king. And this is the account of his rebellion against the king. Solomon had built the supporting terraces and repaired the gap in the wall of the city of his father David. Now Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor, so when Solomon noticed that the young man was industrious, he put him in charge of the whole labor force of the house of Joseph. During that time, the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite met Jeroboam on the road as he was going out of Jerusalem. Now Ahijah had wrapped himself in a new cloak, and the two of them were alone in the open field. And Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing, tore it in 12 pieces, and said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Behold, I will tear the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and I will give you 10 tribes. But 1 tribe will remain for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. For they have forsaken me to worship Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Milcom, the god of the Ammonites. They have not walked in my ways, nor done what is right in my eyes, nor kept my statutes and judgments, as Solomon's father David did. Nevertheless, I will not take the whole kingdom out of Solomon's hand, because I have made him ruler all the days of his life for the sake of David my servant, whom I chose because he kept my commandments and statutes. But I will take 10 tribes of the kingdom from the hand of his son and give them to you. I will give 1 tribe to his son, so that my servant David will always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city where I chose to put my name. But as for you, I will take you, and you shall reign over all that your heart desires, and you will be king over Israel. If you listen to all that I command you, walk in my ways, and do what is right in my sight in order to keep my statutes and commandments as my servant David did, then I will be with you. I will build you a lasting dynasty, just as I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. Because of this I will humble David's descendants, but not forever." Solomon therefore sought to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam arose and fled to Egypt, to Shishak king of Egypt, where he remained until the death of Solomon. As for the rest of the acts of Solomon, all that he did, as well as his wisdom, are they not written in the book of the acts of Solomon? Thus the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. And Solomon rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of his father David. And his son Rehoboam reigned in his place. Well, looks like the sun is basically set. I don't think it's necessarily set because I think it's supposed to go down at like 5, but I don't know, can't really see it setting where it's at. Second Chronicles chapter 9. Now when the queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon, she came to test him with difficult questions. She arrived in Jerusalem with a very large caravan, with camels bearing spices, gold in abundance, and precious stones. So she came to Solomon and spoke with him about all that was on her mind. And Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too difficult for him to explain. When the queen of Sheba saw the wisdom of Solomon, the palace he had built, the food at his table, the seating of his servants, the service and attire of his attendants and cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he presented at the house of the Lord, it took her breath away. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your words and wisdom is true, but I did not believe the reports until I came and saw it with my own eyes. Indeed, not half of the greatness of your wisdom was told to me. You have far exceeded the report I heard. How blessed are your men! How blessed are these servants of yours who stand continually before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you to set you on his throne to be Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you to set you on his throne to be king for the Lord your God. Because your God loved Israel enough to establish them forever, he has made you king over them to carry out justice and righteousness." Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold, a great quantity of spices and precious stones. There had never been such spices as those the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. The servants of Hiram and of Solomon, who brought gold from Ophir, also brought algum wood and precious stones. The king made the algum wood into steps for the house of the Lord and for the king's palace, and into lyres and harps for the singers. Never before had anything like them been seen in the land of Judah. King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba all she desired, whatever she asked, far more than she had brought the king. Then she left and returned to her own country along with her servants. The weight of gold that came to Solomon each year was 666 talents, not including the revenue from the merchants and traders. And all the Arabian kings and governors of the land also brought gold and silver to Solomon. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 shekels of hammered gold went into each shield. He also made 300 small shields of hammered gold. 300 shekels of gold went into each shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Additionally, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with pure gold. The throne had 6 steps, and a footstool of gold was attached to it. There were armrests on both sides of the seat, with a lion standing beside each armrest. 12 lions stood on the 6 steps, one at either end of each step. Nothing like this had ever been made for any kingdom. All King Solomon's drinking cups were gold, and all the utensils of the house of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. There was no silver, because it was accounted as nothing in the days of Solomon. For the king had the ships of Tarshish that went from Hiram's servants, and once every 3 years the ships of Tarshish would arrive bearing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. So King Solomon surpassed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. All the kings of the earth sought an audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom that God had put in his heart. Year after year each visitor would bring his tribute, articles of silver and gold, clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, and 12,000 horses, which he stationed in the chariot cities and also with him in Jerusalem. He reigned over all the kings from the Euphrates to the land of the Philistines, as far as the border of Egypt. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as abundant as sycamore in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and from all the lands. As for the rest of the acts of Solomon, from the beginning to end, are they not written in the records of Nathan the prophet, in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer concerning Jeroboam son of Nebat? Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel 40 years. And Solomon rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of his father David. and his son Rehoboam reigned in his place. All right, one more chapter. I can't tell yet if it's still has any color coming or if it's kind of done. There could be. I would imagine those clouds will get some color on them in a little bit, maybe in a half hour or so. Hopefully that would be awesome, because that would look ridiculous. Second Corinthians chapter 12. I must go on boasting. Although there is nothing to gain, I will go on to visions and revelations from the Lord. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of it, I do not know, but God knows. And I know that this man, whether in the body or out of it, I do not know, but God knows, was caught up to paradise. The things he heard were too sacred for words, things that man is not permitted to tell. I will boast about such a man, but I will not boast about myself, except in my weaknesses. Even if I wanted to boast, I would not be a fool, because I would be speaking the truth. But I refrain, so no one will credit me with more than he sees in me or hears from me, or because of these surpassingly great revelations. So to keep me from being conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan, to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is perfected in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly in my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest on me. That is why, for the sake of Christ, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I have become a fool, but you drove me to it. In fact, you should have commended me, since I am in no way inferior to those super-apostles, even though I am nothing. The true marks of an apostle, signs, wonders, and miracles, were performed among you with great perseverance. In what way were you inferior to the other churches, except that I was not a burden to you? Forgive me this wrong. See, I am ready to come to you a 3rd time, and I will not be a burden, because I am not seeking your possessions, but you. For children should not have to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. And for the sake of your souls, I will most gladly spend my money and myself. If I love you more, will you love me less? Be that as it may, I was not a burden to you, but crafty as I am, I caught you by trickery. Did I exploit you by anyone I sent you? I urged Titus to visit you, and I sent our brother with him. Did Titus exploit you in any way? Did we not walk in the same spirit and follow in the same footsteps? Have you been thinking all along that we were making a defense to you? We speak before God in Christ, and all of this, beloved, is to build you up. For I am afraid that when I come, I may not find you as I wish, and you may not find me as you wish. I fear that there may be quarreling, jealousy, rage, slander. I fear that there may be quarreling, jealousy, rage, rivalry, slander, gossip, arrogance, and disorder. I am afraid that when I come again, my God will humble me before you, and I will be grieved over many who have sinned earlier and have not repented of their acts of impurity, sexual immorality, and debauchery. Oh yeah, we're going to get some color, I think. I was hoping to go farther that way, but I think these are like too wet of marshes here. I don't think I can go further than I am. Whoa. But I'm going to test the water, so to speak. Well, at least look over here and see if there's some kind of path through the reeds or whatever. Doesn't look like it, but maybe if I go... No, it's like a That's too bad. It's a swamp here. Huh. Well, I might actually, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can do one more reading out here somewhere probably, but I don't know if I can get anywhere fast enough to see anything interesting. I'm gonna walk over here real quick just to see what options I have. I don't know if any options. I could just stay there, but I like to do each reading in a different angle, so I'd like to find a slightly different spot to sit in, even if it's pretty similar overall. Yeah. Ah, that's too bad. I thought I could get across this thing, but it's definitely not passable anywhere. Pretty sure. Yeah. Not unless I want to get my feet all goopy wet, which I don't. Not today. That mist. I wonder if that mist is smoke or mist. I don't know. Looks weird. Alright. Well, I might head back to this one spot that was pretty cool. I guess I'm going to end this so I can start another one in just a few minutes. I'll be right back, hopefully, before it gets too dark. I'll catch you later. Thanks for joining me.